Picture a large tree standing in stillness. Two birds perch on its branches, inseparable companions, the text says, intimate as old friends. One of them moves constantly, pecking at the fruit, tasting the sweet and the bitter, restless with appetite. The other does not eat. It simply watches. This image appears first in the Ṛgveda Samhita at 1.164.20 in a cosmological hymn attributed to the ancient seers, and it resurfaces with stunning persistence across centuries of Sanskrit literature. In the Ṛgveda Upanishad, in the Annapurna Upanishad, and most completely in the third Muṇḍaka of the Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad. The fact that this particular image refused to disappear, that generation after generation of teachers returned to these two birds on the same tree, tells us something important. The tradition was pointing at something it considered not merely interesting, but urgent, a structural feature of human experience that ordinary perception consistently misses. The Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad is a text of 64 verses, embedded in the Atharveda, composed in poetic mantra style, and presented as a dialogue between the sage Shaunaka and the sage Angiras. At verse 3.1.1, Angiras speaks the image in its full form. In IAST, the verse reads, Dva suparna sayuja sakaya, samanam vriksham parisasvajate. Tayoranya pipalam svadvatyanashnananyo abhichakashiti. The translation, two birds, inseparable companions, perch on the same tree. One eats the fruit, the other looks on. The scholar Mather notes that the tree is the body, and the two birds represent respectively the empirical self and the eternal transcendental self. One is the jiva, the individual self caught in experience, in karma, in the endless chewing of fruit. The other is the Atman in its witnessing function, the sākṣī, which neither eats nor is nourished nor is depleted. What makes the image philosophically precise is that both birds are on the same tree. The witness is not somewhere else. It is not distant, not unavailable, not locked behind initiation. It is exactly here, on the same branch of this body-mind, in this moment of reading or listening, present and unwavering. The second verse, Muṇḍaka 3.1.2, moves the image toward its psychological consequence. Angiras continues, Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno nishaya shochati muhyamana. Justam yada pashyat anyamisha masya mahimanamiti vita shoka. The rendering, on the same tree, the person sits grieving, drowned in sorrow, bewildered, feeling helpless. But when he sees the other, the Lord content and knows his glory, his grief passes away. Swami Krishnananda's commentary is precise here. The grief of the jiva, the individual self, arises from its inability to live in conformity with the effects of unwise actions, and more fundamentally from its forgetting the watching bird entirely. The eating bird has, so to speak, become so absorbed in the fruit that it has forgotten it has a companion. The path back is simply seeing, pashyati, he sees, not achieving, not accumulating, not constructing, seeing what was already there. The vocabulary the tradition develops around this seeing is worth sitting with. The Ṛgveda Upanishad, at verse 611, gives us the word sākṣī directly, perhaps for the first time with such explicit force in a major Upanishad. Sage Ṛgveda declares, Eko devaha sarvabhuteshu, gud a sarvavyapi, sarvabhutantaratma, karmadyaksha sarvabhutadivasa, sākṣī cheta, kevalo nirgunascha. One God, hidden in all beings, all-pervading, the inner self of all, the overseer of all actions, dwelling in all beings, the witness, pure consciousness, the one, free from qualities. The word sākṣī comes from the root drish, to see, with the prefix sa, meaning with, and aksha, meaning eye. So literally, the one with eyes, the direct eye-witness. But the philosophical meaning exceeds the etymology. Sākṣī is the awareness that witnesses all thoughts, words, and deeds without affecting them or being affected by them. It is the irreducible subject, the one thing that can never become an object of its own observation. This last point is where Yājñavalkya, the great Brahmin sage of the Ṛgveda and Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad, makes his contribution. When Yājñavalkya teaches in King Janaka's court, he refuses to define the Atman by anything positive, because every positive definition would make the witness into an object, and the witness by nature cannot be objectified. So he offers instead the method of neti, not this, not this. The Ṛgveda and Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad at 2.3.6 gives us this phrase as the description of Brahman, not this, not this. Shankara's commentary on the Ṛgveda and Muṇḍaka at 4.3.22 grounds this in a simple structural observation. The self-effulgence of the witness is proved on the grounds that the witnessed objects are different from the witnessed subject. The fire is known by its heat, the sun by its luminosity. The sākṣī is known by the fact that it cannot be included in the list of things observed, because it is the one doing all the observing. When you try to look directly at it, you are already using it to look. The Katha Upanishad gives this realization a different angle. This text is structured around a remarkable narrative. Naciketas, the young son of the sage Vajrasrvasa, is given by his father in a moment of anger to Yama, the god of death. The boy departs to Yama's abode and waits there, patiently, 3 days without food or welcome. When Yama returns and learns of the boy's wait, he offers 3 boons. Naciketas uses his third boon to ask about the nature of what persists after the body dissolves. At verse 2.1.1, as the teaching deepens, Yama says, Paranchi kani vyatrinat swayambus, tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman, kashchid hiraha pratyagātmanam, ikshad avrittachakshur amritatvamichan. The self-existent Lord made the senses with outward-going tendencies. Therefore a person perceives only outer objects with them, not the inner self. But a calm person, wishing for immortality, beholds the pratyagātman, the inward-facing self with eyes turned inward. Pratyagātman, pratyak inward plus Atman, the inward-facing self. Yama's diagnosis here is anatomical, almost. The senses were made to face outward, by design. The default direction of human attention is away from the witness and toward the objects the witness is watching. The dhira, the calm, discerning one, is simply the person who has learned to reverse that direction, not with great effort, but with the kind of patient turning that Naciketas himself models throughout this text. He sat for 3 days at the threshold of death without losing his composure. The tradition is saying something very specific. Access to the witness self requires a particular quality of stillness, not a particular quantity of learning. Consider a woman in her 40s caring for her mother, who has been declining for 2 years with a progressive illness. There are days when the caregiving is manageable, and there are days when grief and exhaustion make even small decisions feel crushing. And then occasionally, in some quiet moment, early morning, before her own household wakes, something shifts. She notices that she is noticing. There is tiredness, yes, and there is grief, yes, but underneath both of those, there is something that is not tired and not grieving, something simply present and clear. She cannot name it. She is not trying to. But for a few minutes the weight is held by that unnamed thing, not dissolved, not denied, but held from below. This is what Yama is pointing toward with the word pratyagātman, not a doctrine, a recognition, available in ordinary stillness to ordinary people who have simply reached the edge of what the outward-facing mind can carry alone. The Bhagavad Gita synthesizes all of this on the battlefield at Kurukshetra. In the 13th chapter, Kṛṣṇa is teaching Arjuna the distinction between the kshetra, the field, meaning the body and mind and all their contents, and the kshetrajna, the knower of the field. At verse 13.22 to 23, depending on the recension, Kṛṣṇa says, upadraṣṭā numanta cha bharta bhokta maheshvara, paramat meti chapyukto dehishmin purusha para. Within this body also resides the Supreme Lord, the witness, the permitter, the supporter, the transcendental enjoyer, the ultimate controller, the Paramatma. The word Kṛṣṇa chooses here is upadraṣṭā, literally one who sees from nearby, a close observer who is not the agent. Shankara's commentary offers an image that has always seemed to me exactly right. When the ritual priests are performing a yajña, there is another figure present, the Brahma priest, who sits to the side, versed in the entire ceremony, watching for errors, neither conducting the fire nor reciting the mantras himself. That is the upadraṣṭā, present, utterly informed, and non-acting. It is worth noting that the Vaishnava and Advaita schools part ways precisely here. For the Gaudiya commentators, this transcendent Purusha is Paramatma, the divine person ontologically distinct from the individual self. For Advaita, the knower of the body and the supersoul are ultimately non-different. The tradition was honest enough to preserve both readings. The Mandukya Upanishad draws the frame around everything else. In 12 terse verses, it maps 4 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and turiya, the 4th. Turiya is not a state you enter and leave as you do the others. It is the constant, unchanging awareness present in all 3 states, the screen on which waking, dream, and deep sleep appear and disappear. Shankara, synthesizing across all these texts, says that the real paramarthika consciousness, the ultimate reality on which the ego is founded, is the sākṣī chaitanya, the witness consciousness. Without it, the ahankara, the I-maker, is inert. The confusion of the ego with the witness is what perpetuates samsara. When the reflected light is mistaken for the source of the light, every fluctuation in the reflection seems to threaten the source itself. Recognizing the sākṣī does not mean the ego stops functioning. It means the ego is no longer mistaken for the final truth of who you are. What to carry forward into your actual day? The 2 birds are not a metaphor for 2 separate selves that you must choose between. They are a map of something already present in every moment of experience. The experience itself and the awareness that holds it. The eating bird is not the enemy. The fruit is not the problem. The tradition is simply pointing out that somewhere behind every moment of grief, confusion, craving, or exhaustion, there is a still companion on the same branch who has never been disturbed by any of it. You do not have to find it. You have only to stop mistaking the taste of the fruit for the whole of what you are. The watching bird has not moved.